Welcome back to the basement. I'm Steve Lewis. As you saw, we managed to get through the first half of 1974 in 2 episodes, one for the first quarter and one for the second quarter. Looking at the sheer volume of notes that I have for the eventful second half of the year, I can see we can't maintain that pace. For the third quarter, the months of July, August, and September, we'll take it in 2 parts. Today, we'll talk about music, movies, and news. Next time, we'll talk about television and what the Beach Boys were up to. Let's get started with a look at the first album chart of the quarter, July 6, 1974. At number 1 is Band on the Run by Paul McCartney and Wings. This had first gone to number 1 for a week back in April. It had returned to number 1 for the middle 2 weeks of June and was now back at number 1 for a 4th and final week. At number 2, Gordon Lightfoot's Sundown album. This had been number 1 for the prior 2 weeks. At number 3 was the soundtrack for The Sting. It had been number 1 for 5 weeks beginning May 4th. At number 4, Cat Stevens' Buddha and the Chocolate Box. It had peaked at number 2 for 3 weeks in May. At number 5 was Elton John's new album, Caribou. This will go to number 1 next week and stay there for 4 weeks. At number 6 was John Denver's Greatest Hits. It had been number 1 when the second quarter began. At number 7, Maria Moldauer's self-titled album. This had been released way back in August 1973. It had gone to number 3 in late May and early June, propelled by her hit Midnight at the Oasis. At number 8, Rick Wakeman's Journey to the Center of the Earth. This will peak at number 3 for 2 weeks beginning July 20th. At number 9, David Bowie's Diamond Dogs. This will peak at number 5 for 2 weeks beginning July 20th. And hanging in at number 10, Elton John's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, which had been in the top 10 since October 27, 1973, including having spent the last 8 weeks of 1973 at number 1. This will be its last week in the top 10. And turning to top 10 singles as the quarter began, at number 1 was Rock the Boat by the Hughes Corporation, asking the musical question, I'd like to know where you got the notion. Sundown by Gordon Lightfoot was at number 2. It had been number 1 a week earlier on June 29th. Billy Don't Be a Hero by Bo Donaldson and the Haywoods was at number 3. It had spent 2 weeks at number 1 beginning June 15th. Rock Your Baby by George McCrae was at number 4. It'll go to number 1 for 2 weeks beginning July 13th. If You Love Me, Let Me Know. Oh, I. By Olivia Newton-John was in its second week at its number 5 peak. At its number 6 peak was Hollywood, Hollywood Swingin' by Kool and the Gang. You make me feel brand new. By the Stylistics was at number 7. It had spent 2 weeks at number 2 beginning June 15th. At number 8 was Annie's Song by John Denver. It'll go to number 1 for 2 weeks beginning July 27th. At number 9 was Anne Murray with a cover of the Beatles' You Won't See Me. It'll peak at number 8 next week, July 13th, and stay there for 2 weeks. And at number 10 was On and On by Gladys Knight and the Pips. It'll peak at number 5 next week and stay there for 2 weeks. In a weird coincidence, the first top 10 singles chart of each of the first 3 quarters of 1974 we've discussed has had a different Gladys Knight and the Pips single at number 10. Top 10 singles that will come and go in the third quarter include The Righteous Brothers, who are back with their first top 40 hit since 1966. Rock and Roll Heaven will be number 3 for 2 weeks beginning July 20th. Of course, we all know what losing everything is like. It's like the sun going down on me. Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me will go to number 2 for Elton John for 2 weeks beginning July 27th behind Annie's Song. It'll go in and out of the top 10 surprisingly quickly, jumping from number 25 to number 6 on July 13th and dropping all the way from number 4 to number 19 on August 17th, still 1 spot lower than Annie's Song at number 18. As discussed in episode 190, Carl Wilson is among the backing vocalists, so is former Beach Boy Bruce Johnston, who also created the vocal arrangement. Rikki Don't Lose That Number by Steely Dan will go to number 4 on August 3rd. The Air That I Breathe by the Hollies will go to number 6 on August 3rd. Feel Like Making Love by Roberta Flack will go to number 1 on August 10th. Please Come to Boston by Dave Loggins will be number 5 for 2 weeks beginning August 10th. Call on Me by Chicago will be number 6 for 2 weeks beginning August 10th. Sideshow by Blue Magic will reach number 8 on August 10th. The Night Chicago Died was a historical hallucination by the English group Paperlace. It recounts events that never happened and places them on the east side of Chicago. As many have pointed out, Chicago has north, south, and west sides. The east side, if it existed, would be somewhere in Lake Michigan. In any case, the single will go to #1 on August 17th. In the UK, the single was the follow-up to Paperlace's #1 hit, Billy Don't Be a Hero. As just mentioned, in the US, the song went to #1 for Bo Donaldson and the Haywoods. You're having my baby by Paul Anka will go to #1 for 3 weeks beginning August 24th. Paul Anka will have a great couple of years in 1974 and 75, beginning with this, his first top 10 hit since 1960. Rufus will have their first hit with a great track written by Stevie Wonder. Tell Me Something Good will go to #3 for 3 weeks beginning August 24th. The Swedish quartet ABBA will have their first U.S. hit with Waterloo, which will go to #6 on August 24th. Wildwood Weed will be another pop country novelty hit for Jim Stafford, who seems to be becoming the Roger Miller of the 70s. It'll be #7 for 2 weeks beginning August 24th. Keep On Smilin' by Wet Willie will go to #10 on August 24th. Eric Clapton with a cover of Bob Marley's I Shot the Sheriff will go to #2 for 2 weeks beginning August 31st. You and Me Against the World by Helen Reddy will go to #9 for 2 weeks beginning September 7th. Donnie and Marie Osmond with a cover of Dale and Grace's #1 hit from 1963, I'm Leaving It All Up to You, will go to #4 on September 14th. Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Babe by Barry White will go to #1 on September 21st. And Rock Me Gently by Andy Kim will go to #1 on September 28th. Turning to new album releases in the third quarter, on July 22nd comes another great album from Stevie Wonder, Fulfillingness First Finale. This will go to #1 for 2 weeks beginning September 14th. Also released in July is 461 Ocean Boulevard. It's Eric Clapton's second solo studio album and something of a comeback after a period of drug-induced inactivity. It'll go to #1 for 4 weeks beginning August 17th. Also released in July is the Phoebe Snow album. This won't make much of an impact at first, but it will eventually go to #4 on March 15, 1975, after the single Poetry Man becomes a #5 hit. And released on August 6th is Barry White's Can't Get Enough. On August 7th comes Joe Cocker's I Can Stand a Little Rain. This will go to #11 on October 26th. Released on August 9th is Perfect Angel by Minnie Riperton. It's another album that will take a long time to peak. It'll go to #4 on March 29th, 1975, just before her single Loving You goes to #1. Released on August 19th is So Far by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, a greatest hits package released in lieu of a new album in support of their big summer reunion tour. It'll go to #1 on November 2nd. Also released that day is Welcome Back, My Friends, to the Show That Never Ends, Ladies and Gentlemen, a triple live album from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. On August 20th comes Live It Up by the Isley Brothers, which will go to #14 for 2 weeks beginning October 26th. And released on August 24th is Verities and Balderdash by Harry Chapin. Also released in August is Not Fragile by Bachman Turner Overdrive. With hits like Taking Care of Business and You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, BTO are huge in the second half of 1974. Their prior album, Bachman Turner Overdrive 2, released in December 73, will climb back up the chart, peaking at #4 for 2 weeks beginning August 31st. Also released in August is Alice Cooper's Greatest Hits, featuring one of my all-time favorite album covers. This will go to #8 on November 16th. Anka by Paul Anka is also released in August. It'll go to #9 for 2 weeks beginning October 26th. Lou Reed's album Sally Can't Dance will go to #10 for 2 weeks beginning November 23rd. Also released in August to little notice is the Average White Band album. This will eventually go to #1 on February 22nd, 1975. The same week their single Pick Up the Pieces also goes to #1. Former members of Jefferson Airplane, now rechristened Jefferson Starship, released their Dragonfly album on September 1st. This will go to #11 on December 21st. And on September 6th comes Thrust by Herbie Hancock, which will go to number 13 on November 9th. Released on September 13th is Nightbirds by LaBelle. It will eventually go to number 7 for 3 weeks beginning March 22nd, 1975, after Lady Marmalade becomes a major hit. Also released on September 13th is Jackson Browne's Late for the Sky. It'll go to number 14 for 2 weeks beginning November 30th. And released on September 26th is the Jim Croce collection, Photographs and Memories, His Greatest Hits. It'll hit number 2 for 2 weeks beginning November 16th. And on November 27th comes Serenade by Neil Diamond. Also released in September is Carole King's Wraparound Joy, which will go to number 1 on November 9th. Cheech and Chong's Wedding Album, which will go to number 5 on November 23rd. And When the Eagle Flies by Traffic, which will go to number 9 on November 16th. Another album becoming notable almost a year after its original release back on July 26, 1973, is Tres Hombres by ZZ Top. It'll go all the way to number 8 on August 10th, 1974. And in new movies in the third quarter, released on July 24th is Death Wish, starring Charles Bronson. In an era where violent crime is on the rise, a one-man vigilante story has obvious appeal. It'll be number 1 at the box office for 2 weeks beginning December 11th. On July 26th, we get Sidney Poitier and Bill Cosby in the caper comedy Uptown Saturday Night. On August 7th, Bruce Lee's 1972 Hong Kong martial arts comedy, Way of the Dragon, finally sees release in the United States as Return of the Dragon more than a year after Lee's death. It'll be number 1 the week of August 14th. Released on August 8th is Macon County Line. Set in a rather unconvincing-looking 1954, it combines popular 1974 themes of 50s nostalgia and people running from the cops. The twist this time is that the cop is unhinged and bent on murder. It's a low-budget thriller that will do very well at the box office, going to number 1 the week of September 25th. Released on August 12th is Harry and Tonto. Art Carney is a retired New Yorker who sets out on a cross-country trip with his cat, Tonto. The film will earn Art Carney an Oscar for Best Actor. And on August 30th comes The Longest Yard, a comedy starring Burt Reynolds as a former pro quarterback now in prison, leading a group of convicts in a football game against the prison guards. It'll be one of the year's biggest hits. Number 1 at the box office on October 2nd, and again for 3 weeks beginning October 30th. And I'm sure most of you are way ahead of me in realizing that the third quarter of 1974 was very eventful in news. On July 29th, former Mamas and Papas member Cass Elliot dies in London at the age of 32. Though the story will persist for years that she had choked on a ham sandwich, the cause of death is a heart attack. On July 30th, in a unanimous decision, the Supreme Court rules that President Nixon must turn over the remaining White House tape recordings to the Watergate special prosecutor. Meanwhile, the House Special Committee on the matter recommends impeachment hearings against Nixon for obstruction of justice. On August 8th, with removal from office by impeachment looming, in a widely anticipated statement carried on all 3 networks, President Nixon announces, "I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow." On the next morning, August 9th, all networks carry Nixon's uncharacteristically emotional farewell address to the White House staff and his departure by helicopter. Gerald R. Ford becomes the 38th President of the United States. On August 20th, the new president, Gerald Ford, nominates New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller as U.S. Vice President. He'll be confirmed by Congress a short time later. On Sunday morning, September 8th, President Ford announces that he has issued a full and unconditional pardon to Richard Nixon for any crimes he committed or may have committed in connection with Watergate. Understandably, many people felt that this was part of some corrupt bargain to allow Nixon to escape responsibility. The mere fact the announcement was made early on a Sunday morning makes it seem like the administration is trying to sneak it by the American people. Ford's decision has been reassessed over the years and is now seen in a generally more favorable light. At the time, it was largely reviled and many believed had already rendered Ford unelectable in the 1976 presidential race. Later that same day, September 8th, in Twin Falls, Idaho, Evel Knievel, famous for jumping his motorcycle over cars, trucks, and buses, attempts to jump the Snake River Canyon in a specially designed rocket in front of a live paying audience, with many more paying to watch at theaters on closed-circuit simulcast. It's widely assumed he will succeed or die, with the latter seeming more likely. As it happens, the parachute of his sky cycle apparently deploys prematurely, landing him in the canyon unharmed. So that's where we'll leave it for this time. I hope you'll join me next time when we wrap up the third quarter of 1974 with a look at television and the Beach Boys. The week after that, we'll devote to a discussion of the Endless Summer album. Then we'll return to wrap up 1974 with a look at a very eventful fourth quarter. As always, I look forward to your comments and feedback. Please hit like if you don't mind, subscribe if you haven't. Have a great week. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.